Thank you for being here. Earlier today, GPL put out a press statement saying that they're hoping to hook up the power barge today, and hopefully that barge will start supplying power from this afternoon. We're hoping that with the 36 megawatts now added to the system, that we'd have enough power in the system to end the current spate of blackouts, which come from unavailability of power. There may be isolated systems because of the poor transmission and distribution system. But where we have to deliberately have load shedding, as happened in the past several months, couple of months, because there was simply not enough power to meet peak demand. So the 36 megawatts would allow us to meet peak demand and even allow us to go into maintenance of some of the additional units where their maintenance was deferred simply because we had no other capacity. We're still looking to see if we can get an additional 30 megawatts of power into the system in a similar arrangement to the one that we have had with Car Power. That is for 2 years until the gas to energy project comes on stream. That will be able to supply enough power to the country. We'd have a massive injection of 300 megawatts of new power, considering that we are using now, the peak demand is about 180. That's by any standard, a massive injection of new power, and from a new power plant too. So we can then put all of these older units into reserve, maintain them and keep them in reserve. So that hopefully will definitively solve the power situation, and of course provide cheaper power to our people too. So I'm extremely pleased with that press release that GPL issued today, that hopefully by this evening they'd be able to start receiving power from that power barge. Since this is my first Thursday press conference after our Congress, I want to return to the issue of the party's Congress, the 32nd Congress, which was recently held. You know, immediately after the Congress, from the moment it was closed, I moved to a press conference, that was Sunday last, at which I outlined in a basic fashion what took place at the Congress and the key outcomes of the Congress. At that time, I had not spent enough time looking at what was said during the period of the Congress from our detractors about the Congress itself. I knew what was said before the Congress. Many of them were predicting bacchanal, they were predicting warfare, they were predicting confusion. We had over 40 articles and social media posts from our detractors, particularly my detractors, urging people not to support me, not to vote for me. There were messages to the delegates of our Congress as to what they should do and what they shouldn't do. This is from our detractors. And I'm so pleased that in spite of that, the sustained attempt to steer people to a particular outcome, they've all failed. And our Congress, by any metric whatsoever, it was a resounding success. As we pointed out in our release just a couple of days ago when we appointed the executive committee of the party, that if you measure it from the point of view of the metric of scale, it's unprecedented, both in our own history and in the history of Congresses by any party in this country. If you look at it from the point of view of the metric of logistics, it was unbelievable. And all of these were put together not by a professional group of people who manage events of that nature, but by volunteers from this party. And yesterday we had a small activity to thank the volunteers, but they did an extremely great job, and they made our Congress a resounding success. In spite of what our detractors said, people were brought here from different parts of the country safely. They went back safely. They were accommodated, and they were happy with the spirit of it. They knew they couldn't be accommodated in five-star hotels, but they were pleased with the level of accommodation they had here. The food, everything went well. Security, logistics, registration, everything went well and was professionally done. And I want to publicly once again thank those volunteers. So if you look at it from the discussion itself, as I said, and we said in our press release, the profundity of the discussion, you would see that it was a Congress of substance. Now, our detractors, and I'm going to come to them a minute from now, there's one by a peeping Tom. Now, these are anonymous people again. They said the PPP's Congress was political fantasy. And they said our Congress was a failure and our party has descended into political irrelevance. Now, this is the largest political party in the country, and it has descended into political irrelevance. If we're irrelevant, then the others are not even existent. And so this is the bilge that you get from the Kaichor News and their anonymous writers. They said the Congress failed to engage seriously with issues such as oil wealth management, corruption, infrastructure development, and socioeconomic hardships. Well, clearly, they did not know what took place at the Congress, because apart from the televised activities, which was largely the opening ceremony and the presentation of the Central Committee report, which I did, there were several workshops, and we have the reports from these workshops. As I pointed out, there were 7 workshops. Party organization, politics and parliament, local government, international situation, youth and gender, economic and social situation, PR and social media. There has not been a single idea that has not been discussed in any one in these workshops combined. We talk about fighting corruption in the workshops. We talk about ensuring that the party and its membership don't become selfish, that people come to us only for what they can get, and forget the ethos of our party, which is to serve. We spoke about the oil and gas sector, about the need to manage it well, and also to ensure equitable distribution of resources. We spoke about water, water on the coast, on the hinterland. In the hinterland, we spoke of job creation, education and health, housing for people, almost every topic that you can think about, local government, how to improve local government. Young people, you already heard, we said we need to rebuild the youth movement in the party and the women's movement in the party. We talk about PR, how we will address this, how we have to work now harder to make sure that the whole country understands what we believe in and our achievements. We talk about fighting off our detractors, not because we're thin-skinned, but because they're trying to distort our history. A lot of the members spoke about this, and they're critical of some of these so-called NGOs and the others who are unaccountable, and newspapers. They had a full day at it. We spoke about in the workshops, people reaffirm the multi-ethnic nature of the party. They were made suggestions as how we can broaden the base of the party along racial lines, along religious lines, etc. All of these took place. And here we have somebody saying, oh, we didn't engage in any substantive discussions. And that it somehow we have descended into political irrelevance. And this is from the Culture News. And then they concluded, somewhere midway here, the opposition parties present a minimal to no threat to the ruling party and the government. Despite this reality, the ruling party has opted to convert into weekly press conferences into a sledgehammer against the opposition and section of civil society that dare criticize the government. So I think they're talking about me here, this thing here. But I don't, if you criticize us fairly, you don't find any sledgehammer here. But we're gonna not only have a sledgehammer, we'd have a bulldozer to come down on the heads of those who distort our history, who will lie about us, who will try to divide our people along racial and religious lines. We will come down on their heads with a bulldozer, not a sledgehammer, because for too long we've allowed that to happen as a party. And for too long we've allowed them to divide this country and hold back the development of Guyana. So we are not going to be apologetic about that. Definitely I'm not going to be apologetic about it here. So at the party Congress, I'm going to urge you to read, and we're going to share the Central Committee report of the party. You will see that we tackled almost every issue ranging from our history to the future, what we want to build for Guyana. And we took people in a brief fashion through tracing the entire history of the party and focusing on our achievements. And the conclusion will be, for any independent, impartial reader, will be that the People's Progressive Party has always stood on the side of progress, freedom, development. Has always stood on the side of bringing people together rather than dividing them. Has always stood in a very, very uncompromising way on the side of our country in relation to the maintenance of its territorial integrity and sovereignty. If you trace our entire history, you will see that. You will see our legacy in different periods where we have taken bad legacies and turned them into dynamic environments. You would see a sustained history of planning for the current, to address the immediate situation of the country, but keeping a view on long-term prosperity. You trace our history from the early days to now, and you will see these trends flowing through our entire history, regardless of who is running the PPP government, starting from Chedi Jagan all the way to our finale. We've held a consistent line. Pro-working class party, and a party that at the same time has created conditions for private sector growth and wealth creation, without these objectives not being contradictory. I think those are the fighter jets. So that's clear. And I'm going to let you look at that yourselves and make that judgment. Some people will never be able to make that judgment. It'll always be because they're jaundiced. And one thing that has happened, this Congress has done, apart from positioning the People's Progressive Party to win the next elections, re-energizing its activists and supporters, getting out of them a commitment and a resoluteness to work harder on the ground to achieve the objectives of our party, bringing people together, progress on the ground. It has done another thing also. It has caused a major unhinging of the opposition. A kind of, I'm trying to be benign, a kind of restlessness, mental kind of unease. I'm choosing my words carefully, mental unease, and maybe delusion, basically, delusion, a great state of delusion. So let us take a view of how this has expressed itself. I'm going to go through several pieces. So Gary Bess, a former head of our army and an executive member of the PNC, a major party in the coalition. So this is an executive, sitting executive member of a political party. They wrote an opinion on the Mara waves, I think it's today or yesterday. The PNC's 28 years while in office are solid. Jagdeo needs to look elsewhere for fiction. Now, what this has done, it has unmasked Gary Best fake intellectualism. So let me go through a couple of things that he says here, just since today we are having fun. So he said that Jagdeo, that such an attack on the PNC will come from Jagdeo, the same PNC that birthed him into public service and politics, is beyond shameful. So this is Gary Best saying that I should be the last person to criticize the PNC because they birthed me in politics and in public service. So I got involved in politics at the age of 13 when I joined the PYO. And what was the prevailing condition at that time? What were we fighting against? We were fighting a dictatorship. Rigged elections to stay in power. I actually saw it happen. I saw people in my village, the elections, when the soldiers came and took away the boxes, they were crying out of despair because they couldn't do anything. That is what we wanted to change, not to be second-class citizens in this country and to grow up in a condition where our dreams couldn't be realized. People, tons of people from my generation probably were motivated by that. And so I saw how it happened. When the results came out, my village, the votes were changed, and my village voted 95% for APNU, for the PNC at that time. And so that is how we got involved. But at age 13, if anything, it was, yeah, he's right that the PNC birthed me into politics because I wanted to change what the PNC was practicing. And I think most people knew there wouldn't been a future for their country, for any of us, regardless of whether we are supporters of the PNC or not, had that situation persisted, if we didn't go back to a free, open society. So he wants me to be grateful for this. Public service, I came back to Guyana in 1990 from studies. I didn't go on a scholarship from the PNC abroad. I came back home when people were just fleeing the country. I came back, I passed through New York on the way back home. I passed through the US on the way back home. And people were saying to me, why are you going home? So I came home and I started working at state planning. So that is how I came home back in the heart of the period when we were struggling for free and fair elections. You remember in 1990, there were postponed elections, so that term for Desmond Hoyt lasted 7 years instead of 5 years, because the elections should have been held in 1990, and they were held in 1992. And then we got free and fair elections. So he is wrong. But he goes on to say, sadly for him, a past to which he is forever tied. Step up, VP, show gratitude. Now, if anybody should show gratitude, it should be Gary Best. When Gary Best, Collins did not want him at all to be the chief of staff. Collins, who is a member of the PNC too, and Collins did not even show up to his commissioning parade because they felt he was useless. I don't want to tell you what else they thought about him here. But Collins did not show up, and both of them ended up in the leadership of the PNC. So there were about 6 or 7 other persons ahead of Gary Best, but who I felt could not take over the mantle of the leadership there. Gary Best became chief of staff. I appointed him chief of staff. The PNC was opposed to it, every one of them. He became chief of staff. If anybody should show gratitude to the PPP, and he talks about racism and all of this stuff, it should be Gary Best. But as I said before, he's unhinged by the Congress. I think he's becoming unhinged by the Congress. He said about our Congress again, I need to go through this to just show you the mindset of people who are in the PNC's executive and who believe that they can run this country. He says, Well, just look at the recent outcome of the PPP's Congress elections, and you will see master riggers at their best. How else could results be so perfect? So much for that rigging lie. So if the results come out smoothly, the results, they gotta be rigging here, because you cannot have rigging, or you have to rig to have perfect results. This tells you a lot about his mindset. That rigging is deeply ingrained in the psyche of the leaders of the People's National Congress. This guy said, the PPP began defunding the Guyana Defense Force. In 1990, the capital budget of the Guyana Defense Force was less than the salary of one consultant to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. If you want to dispute that now because it sounds so unbelievable, I can go down to the details now. I can get the details. You can check yourself. Go to the capital budget of the Guyana Defense Force in 1990. Go to the estimate. Check how much was in the capital allocations, and I can give you the salary of one Foreign Service consultant. The consultant salary was more than the entire budget. Today, they have a massive multi-billion-dollar budget. And this, Gary Best says, the PPP began defunding the GDF. He didn't know that when he became Chief of Staff. And when we paid for him, he used to go and see Roger Luncheon every week to get money for his own studies abroad when he was studying in Trinidad and Tobago. And to say that now. He goes on to repeat the lies about the NIS and the Berbice Bridge. These are the two most lucrative investments that we've ever had, the best investment for the NIS, because it gave them a stream of revenue that would far exceed what they would have gotten elsewhere. And we got the Berbice Bridge built. We've debunked that lie already. He repeats it here and says how reprehensible. He speaks about it was the PNC that established the first nationally owned bank. The bank was closed under the PPP. It was the PNC that established the first and only agricultural bank. By 1992, they had all the banks. We had the state had ownership, either own or control 8 banks, and everyone was bankrupt. Everyone was bankrupt in Guyana. Mortgage finance, massive bankruptcy. And remember, at that time, we had this massive deficit that was 25% of GDP. Our debt service took up more than 100% of revenue. All of these institutions were bankrupt. Guess why we had to disengage? Because they got a loan from the IDB for the agricultural bank. They gave 12 of the top members of the private sector who were part of the committee for re-election of President Hoyt, most 80% of the money as a loan, before the devaluation, just before the devaluation. When the devaluation took place, this was in G dollars, they had a massive devaluation of the currency. Remember, the currency went from 4 to 1 Guyana dollars to 120 something to 1 in a short period of time because the country was bankrupt. The people borrowed at a lower when the currency was not devalued. And soon as it was devalued, they came back to try to pay back now in the devalued Guyanese dollar, because they got the loan disbursed in US dollars. And I can go back in history because I had to live through that. In the period when I was Minister of Finance, we had to find solutions to that. And we managed to disengage from all of these bankrupt institutions without any recourse to the Treasury. Unlike Jamaica, when you look at the last decade of growth in Jamaica, their failures, banking failures, etc., caused a debt of about $2 to $3 billion US on the Treasury. Gary Best is proud of that history, that they ran these institutions into bankruptcy and they became piggy banks for people connected to the APNU, AFC. Well, PNC, I should say, at that time, PNC. And he spoke about the massive housing drive that the PNC did. And I pointed out that since Burnham died since 1980, they stopped building homes. From 1980 to 1992, they dismantled the Ministry of Housing. There was no Ministry of Housing. There was no housing program when we got into office. No housing program, no Ministry of Housing. We had to reestablish that, and in a number of years, we started off a housing program that is unprecedented in maybe the history of any country in the world, if you look at what we have done over the period of PPP leadership. And look what they did in the 5 years that they came back in, practically nothing. So, and he's proud of that. Since Burnham, early days, they stopped building houses. Another lie here, fallacy. He speaks about, why the PNC transitioned Guyana from a state-driven economy to a market-based economy through the re-engineering of state assets and cooperatives for the benefit of Guyanese. What does he mean by re-engineering of state assets? He means selling out to their cronies. So he said we sold off to Sanata Textile Mill and GPC. Let me first of all say to the public in Guyana, every asset that we sold from 1992 to 2011 is in a report that we tabled in the Parliament. Every single entity we sold, how much we sold it for, to whom, what process we went through. We're the party that stopped privatization when we came into office and established a privatization unit, a board, and then you had to go to cabinet. A multi-layered system that allowed us to be able to transparently do any privatization. Contrast that with what they did. The Lord Beaverbrook, the GTC. They sold the GTC assets, Lord Beaverbrook. Just Google Lord Beaverbrook. Sold it, resold it for a major set of money. They were collecting bribes from them. The Barama deal was shrouded in secrecy. GT&T paid, I think for 80% of the assets, they paid $16 million US. We already had $5 million in the bank account at that time. And so the company made in a single year, I think, more money than that. But the key thing, it was not advertised for sale. It was never advertised for sale. I can go through the paint company that they sold off to cronies, the rice mill in King Grove. There are a long list of things that they sold off without any public tender whatsoever. In fact, they had 5 agencies of the government doing privatization. Gary Best thinks he can rewrite history now, in this day and age, that he thinks he can rewrite history. It's a lie. It's a total lie. And then he says the PPP is still communist, masquerading as a democracy. And that the PPP is the one that rigs elections. This is what happened after our Congress. It made him raving stark mad, because he has seen any chance of them emerging as a serious contender in the 2025 elections disappearing. And that's what it did to him, unhinged him. In one letter, so many lies. And this is the opinion. Jagdeo needs to talk about fiction here. Someday I will go in great depth into what we took place from the financial institutions in the country, what took place for privatization and how we dealt with it, the structural adjustment programs that they had committed to, and what they gave up. This is not the occasion for it, but I think that needs to be done sometime in the future. Now, the blunt here, the blunt Congress and Kangalang said, that's Sky Chor News, said, so the weekend's confab, which was held at the expense of taxpayers. So this is very dangerous. They sneak this here in, that this was held at the expense of taxpayers. The Irfan Ali, who was our finance secretary, presented a report to the Congress as to how much money we raised, because that's part of our presentation to our Congress. How much money we raised and through what means we raised the resources. I spoke of this just after the Congress, the press conference. We raised money through several activities, through volunteer work, through the barbecues, through all sorts of things, by large number of groups. And so our Congress was entirely funded by party funds, not state money. We're not the PNC that used to do all of these things. We're a different party, and we can account for that. We've seen Joey Jagan going a little crazy too. The PPP Congress is a mimicry of the Chinese Communist Party. Joey Jagan as usual, useless as usual. The ultimate rubber stamping, another Kaichor News. I'm telling you, they were restless, hoping that. So here they said, again, they're stuck with this bourgeois class and all of that sort of stuff. The old sort of socialist rhetoric. And I think this is coming mainly from some people who are stuck in that era, the old communists who are writing for the Starbuck News. I see GHK Lal weighed in. The PPP Congress, the good, the better, the best, is just the usual. I need also the war that never ended. Jagdeo is wrong here. The Cold War never ended, so that means we need to keep the communists, the Marxism, Leninism in our constitution, and that we need to keep socialism in our constitution because the Cold War never ended, which is nonsense again, because the Cold War did end in the form that it was pursued from the 50s all the way into maybe the collapse of communism. It was based on ideology. Now there is a new adjustling for world leadership and for the demarcation of the world. The conflicts between China and the United States now, not of an ideological nature. It's not of an ideological. China is probably one of the practicing more free market economics than anywhere in the world, although it has a communist government. It is about jostling for world leadership. So if you can't understand that, the whole extent of this analysis is wrong. But if we did not remove Marxism, Leninism, if we didn't remove socialism from our constitution, these very people will come and say, you see, it's still a communist party. So you can't win them. Roysdale Ford weighed in, and his thing about the Congress was President Ali dancing. And he said, oh, they didn't discuss the key things about infrastructure and environment and all of that. Of course, he thinks this is the PNC's Congress. And by the way, Roysdale Ford should tell us how an individual, he still has not answered this question, how an individual will go purporting to act on his behalf to Clifton Bacchus, the owner of Sleep Inn Hotel, and say to him that if you give us $3 million US, we'll give you your casino license. So this is not new information. I mentioned it in opposition. You can go back and see that if you're interested in it. And you would hear the names of the people I had mentioned in the past. How is it he was chairman of the Gaming Commission at that time? He was chairman of the Gaming Commission. Only that Gaming Commission could have approved a casino license. They were trying to shake him, Clifton Bacchus, down from Sleep Inn. They denied him the license, of course, throughout, although he had met all the requirements. Met all the requirements. And so he still needs to answer about his tenure at the Gaming Commission. And I suspect that that is what Norton was alluding to when he said he doesn't have baggage that the others are bringing to this contest for the leadership of the PNC. But he recognizes it as harmless entertainment, light-hearted gesture, and all of that. But still tries to go after the president in an ad hominem way. Every day this happens. They go after President Ali in that manner. The Marara Waves allows the GKHK Lal, and Dennis Chabral is a member of the press executive of the Press Association, and they talk about quality of journalism. And then every day it's an ad hominem attack against people, including myself, in the opinion columns. He promotes that. Which respecting self or media operative or independent media will do that. But this is the usual stuff. They had nothing to say about the Congress, so it all came down to President Ali now having fun with his comrades. This is a tradition of Congress. Rohi was singing the last Congress too. They were trying to get me to sing. I'm not singing for any money because I don't want us to lose votes in the PPP. I made it clear. But if you know President Ali, he's not fake. This is how he has been his whole life. He's a serious person, a smart person. He works hard, and he has fun too. And this, since I know him, he's not a fake person like Roysdale Ford with his fake smile and this pretend voice to add gravity to the situation. All pretend. To sound intellectual. He's not fake. He'll do this and then he'll go back to dealing. He'll dance and have fun with his comrades and then go on back to some serious business. But it has haunted them. They couldn't find anything about the Congress. So now they're very nasty against President Ali. So that is what he did there. There's been some talk, and maybe this is among serious people too, about it, and this one I'll take seriously, about the retention of democratic centralism. So they keep asking me, now that you remove socialism, you've removed, or as a party, the Congress, I don't mean me, Jagdeo, I meant the party, unanimously. Everyone, when the vote was put to the Congress, everyone voted unanimously to remove the Marxism, Leninism, and the socialism from our Constitution. There was no dissenting voice. Now, they say, is democratic centralism not also a feature of Marxism, Leninism? And I had to explain to a number of people that democratic centralism retained in the Constitution, first of all, is stripped of its ideological and theoretical framework. Means simply majority rule. And we've defined it that way in the Constitution itself. So when Dennis Chabral says here, in the low vote getters elevated to PPP's key decision-making body, and by the way, it's not the three candidate members also sit at the level of the executive. So let me clarify that in this article that came out, because this article said only if they need a replacement, the three candidate members that are Kwame McCoy, the Anand Prasad, and Ricky Ramraj, they will then be replaced by these three members. But it's not so. They sit in the executive, but they don't have voting rights. Similarly, like the 35 who sit in the leaders, the Central Committee, they have full voting rights, and the other 5 who sit there, the candidate members, they don't have voting rights, but they participate in the discussions at the Central Committee. And saying that now, I want you to look at the large number of young people that came into the Central Committee. We had about 10 or 11 new members of the 40 who came in to the Central Committee, the highest body in the People's Progressive Party. Outside of it, it's Congress. And that's at 25%, over 25% turnover at the leadership of the party. It shows a party that is dynamic, that is constantly infusing itself at the leadership level with new people. And if you look at the ethnic diversity, women, the young people and elderly people, it reflects Guyana. So I just wanted to clarify that issue. But here, in this same article by by Dennis Chabral, it says, democratic centralism, a Leninist approach in which decisions are made centrally and binding on all members. It's not made centrally alone and binding on members. It says that decisions made by majority are binding on all the members of the party, which is normal. And that is what is retained here. And then stripped of its ideological context means really majority rule. And we've defined it that way in the Constitution. So this was a serious concern, I think, raised by people. So I wanted to address it in that manner. I see a number of other articles that came up that are worth clarifying in the media on the oil and gas, and the I see something on Dr. Trotz. I think the Kite tried to steer it in a particular direction, but I agree fully with Dr. Trotz that we need to build capacity in the EPA, and that's precisely what we are doing. However, I want to refer to what the head of the EPA has said publicly that we have independent satellite monitoring now, the EPA, to detect any sheen in the water so that even small quantities of oil leak can be detected because of high-resolution satellite imaging and monitoring, that we have thermal imaging now, independent thermal imaging to detect any flare so that we can, if there is flaring done, that we will detect it, that there is a live feed for discharge water and that they do independent samples of the water to be discharged. They test it to ensure that the water meet the standards that are outlined in the environmental permits that they have received. And we've strengthened those standards, and they are international standards. Notwithstanding all of that, we need to continue building capacity at the EPA and in government itself, independent capacity to do greater monitoring. So I agree with that. There's no conflict whatsoever, and we are working on it. But we do have some capacity to deal with this issue. The other matter is, I saw another report in the Starbuck News where Christopher Ram said that we should acquire Hess share. I don't know where we're going to get the money to acquire Hess share now, but we have this suggestion now to acquire Hess share. The government should take it, unless he thinks we should take it for free. And secondly, he said that they're supposed to seek our approval before any transfer of the shares there. Well, I want to repeat again, when this issue came up, when it was first brought or announced, the merger between, or the takeover of Hess International by Chevron, I explained to the media, based on advice from the ministry, that the lawyers said that in this case, they don't need to seek the approval of the ministry, because what Chevron was acquiring was Hess International, and Hess Guyana Company was part of Hess Holdings International. So that's not going to change. If they try to incorporate a new company now to transfer Hess Guyana shares into that, then that would require the approval of the minister. So we dealt with that issue before. It has come up once again here. And of course, with the production, this has been some cause for concern, and about the production being about 645 barrels per 1,000 barrels per day, which is above the rated capacity, the initial announced capacity, which would be about nearly 100,000 less, because I think it's 120 in the first FPSO and then 220 each from the others, the two others that are functioning now. So the question has been is that if you're producing more than what the initial capacity of the FPSOs, the announced capacity of these FPSOs, is whether you're doing so safely. And so the ministry has assured me that they're technical before this is done, that they have reviewed this. The EPA has reviewed the plans of the operators to increase the production. And they have said that this is safe. So it's safe, and it was on the basis of optimization. So was there an independent check by the government or approval of the government to And was this submitted to the government? They have assured me, the ministry, that this was done, and they had their technical people review these plans. So those are three things that keep surfacing all around. We have seen a number of other issues surface. There's one that I want to deal with a bit more. And again, it relates to President Ali. So I see the Village Voice, which is the PNC mouthpiece, saying they put out a story that President Ali's coziness with Christian churches worrying, because President Ali attended the Assembly of God event at Evelary. And they did a long story on this, how there is separation between church and state. There's that principle in our country. Religious institutions should not be entangled in partisan politics. It will undermine their autonomy and compromise their spiritual vision. That the Christian churches must resist being tools for partisan agenda. And so one has to wonder why this article. And it goes right back to this feeling in the PNC that they had a monopoly for life over Afro-Guyanese, and regardless of how they treat them, regardless of if they keep them dispossessed when they're in office, and never pay attention to any issues concerning progress at the national level, but more particularly Afro-Guyanese progress, that they must vote and support them in a blind fashion for life. They felt that for a long time, and they acted accordingly. And that is why they have, as I explained over the past several press conferences, that they have acted so violently and so in such a robust manner when they see that we have in Guyana emerging national unity on the basis of race, because it will destroy the ideology that they practice, this racist ideology that all their lives they practice, and in keeping Afro-Guyanese down. So, but they also felt that Christians must only support the PNC because for a long period they believed they had a monopoly over the Christian churches. But in our party, similarly, how we promote racial unity, we've always promoted religious tolerance and harmony. So people don't get judged on the basis of whom they support. So Priya Manik Chan is a Christian Edge Hill is a pastor. We've had Ripu Daman Prasad, who was a priest, a pandit. We've had imams in this party. We never judge people on the basis of their religion. They're all members of our family. They're treated equally. We've had in our party a Hindu as president, a Muslim as president, and a Christian, Samuel Hines, as president, a PBP president. For us, it did not matter. It does not matter. We've always promoted this. They're the ones talking. Now they see President Ali going there. You notice President Ali has gone to Hindu functions. He's gone to Muslim functions. Why wasn't that worrying? Why was that not worrying? But suddenly he goes to a Christian function and it becomes worrying for them. But our philosophy and the government's philosophy is to promote the development of religious and racial tolerance in this country. And we will support the Hindus, and we support them when Hindus want to highlight their faith through Diwali and Pagwan, etc. And we supported Ramadan, like Ramadan activities, and we support Christmas and other festivities. Look at what, like on Main Street, all these Christmas villages, etc. We supported everyone. The Ramadan village, the Diwali village. What is wrong with the state doing that? It doesn't change our secular nature. That where we don't judge people on the basis of their religion or their race, but we support them. And so President Ali going there, it's not cause for worrying there, but it worries them because they want to keep now a religious separation. Now, large number of our members are Christians. Large number of our members, the head of the list in region, in Linden for local government election, was a pastor with his own church. Brian Alicock, the regional chairman in Region 9, is a pastor. What's wrong with this? Vindhya Prasad is the head of the Dharmic Sabha. So this is a new form of division now, and it worries them. I remember they used to go in the period running up to the 2015 elections. They had some people who were some APNU pastors in the churches who used to say, "I'm the devil." Actually, from the pulpit, preached that I'm the devil. I didn't complain about it. But they're losing that now. They're losing what they believe was this kind of forum to tell lies, because people are going there now who might be of different political parties. So they go to church, but they're not going there because they're PNC members or PPP members. They're going there to give praise to God. But they can't now keep the churches segregated and aligned to the PNC. So it is worrying to them. And that is why they act up in this manner. It's like the Congress has unhinged them. This religious unity is unhinging them, as is racial unity, because they have, throughout their lives, kept people in a particular frame. We're victims, we must fight against everyone else, we must not be united with anyone else. And so it is worth, it might have passed off just without any notice, but I looked at it carefully, and it comes directly from the PNC, because Village Voice is the voice of the PNC. So we should look at it, and we must resist it. And I thank President Ali for going to the church, and keep going to churches and mosques and temples and wherever you want to. I've had some very worrying news that a particular member of parliament and a former minister, but more the member of parliament from the APNU AFC, has gone to several contractors who are building these pumps and extorting them for money now. He's saying to them that if you don't give me money, I'll write you up in the newspaper, we'll go to the Public Procurement Commission, we will destroy your reputation. So the contractors are a little uneasy because they've been asked for money from these people. I knew there had to be something, because these people, that's that's their way of operating. So you make a public issue about a few people, and then you go and extort the others. It happens with some of the social media people all the time. It is a form of extortion that the APNU is very, very familiar with. At Peters Hall, it's very unfortunate that we had to, I saw a full story from the Starbuck News. We went through this for a long time. And it's very unfortunate that we have to now move to acquire the land through compulsory acquisition, but there's no other choice now. The offer would still be on the table, the offer of compensation, assistance to move, also land elsewhere. All of this offer would still be on the table, but we've had to now, we're coming to crunch time. We have to now start building the road to connect the Heroes Highway with the bridge. And because that bridge will be completed next year, and we now need to complete it. Most of the other people have agreed, and now they've signed up the agreement, and they have moved or received their compensation, or in the process of doing so. There are a few who have not done, but we have no choice at this stage to complete that process. I met with that group several times. Many of them came to Freedom House to talk to me, and I understand the feeling when you live in an area for a very long time and you have to move. So I understand what is happening. I'm still open if we can talk to them again. We'd still remain open to people because we don't like to do this, but when national development is at stake, sometimes we have to make tough choices. I seen the press association put out something, and I'm not gonna maybe deal with that today. So let me just end there. Thank you. Because I'm sure you have lots of questions. My dear friends at the Kaichor News have had to apologize about 20 times so far. This is a new thing to everybody under the sun, but it's gutter journalism. Let me say that Kaichor News, pure gutter journalism. I didn't give a shout out to Rickford Burke, the criminal in New York, for a long time. I think he is over there. I believe he's a subject of some major investigations going on in the US itself for extortion, and he will be a big liability to the Democratic Party, huge liability over there. But there are serious investigations about his extortion racket that he's going on with. So I just had to give him a shout out there. I hadn't done so for a while. But Kaichor News is going to continue with its gutter journalism. I saw Glenn Lal wants to form a political party, and he believes, so I heard he had a Congress too. He had a Congress that was well attended over the West Coast. He had a Congress of his party. If he forms, we already know the people who are aligned to him is a bunch of crooks, and we're going to expose them. A lot of them are collecting money abroad. They were part of scams here in Guyana, and it's so true that the birds of a feather flock together. So we're waiting for him to announce formally, and we're going to then deal with all of those. Thank you. No, nobody this week. Marcel, My friends at the Kaichor News are not here. Anyhow, thank you very much. Thank you.